Hello, everyone. This is the first and second class of our Buddhist basic class series, which is going to help you prepare for taking refuge and doing a few lovely things at the end of this series. You'll be taking some vows if you are interested, and receiving your name, your Vietnamese name, if you so wish. So the first class this morning we're going to have is the three jewels. I'm taking refuge in the three jewels, and the second class will be the Four Noble Truths. So our first presenter is Reverend Emily Martin, who is here today with her lovely face, and she went through our ministerial program, and she'll be talking today about the three jewels, right?
Yes.
Take it away, Reverend Emily.
Okay. First of all, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to let you know that I'm in my house in Hood River, Oregon, and I have one of my children nearby, so it may be interrupted, but that's life. I am a school teacher during the day. I teach high school physics and environmental science, and recently have had the opportunity to teach mindfulness and meditation to my students. So excuse me for being teacherly if it comes to that. I'm going to be interactive and ask you some questions. So hopefully there'll be time for feedback and connection and learning from each other. All right, taking refuge. So I want to start with just trying to get a sense of what that word refuge means. Why might we take refuge? So when you guys think about refuge, what comes to mind? What does that word mean to you? And anyone can jump in here.
Safety.
Safety, beautiful. Yeah, what else comes to mind? What words come up?
Shelter.
Shelter, yes.
Comfort.
Comfort.
Think of like the wildlife refuge where like animals can be kind of in their like natural habitat, but be like safer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a beautiful one. We have a local wildlife refuge here on the corner in Glenwood. Yeah.
Home.
Yeah. Feeling like a sense of refuge in our home. Being at peace. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Does anyone else want to share? It's hard for me to see everyone's faces.
Protection.
Yeah, so we have safety, home, protection, like wildlife feeling like they can be in their natural habitat. Those are beautiful reflections. And even just saying the word refuge, I get this sense of like calm and peace. I looked up where that word comes from. The Latin word is refugium. And of course, this is a translation we have to remember from the Sanskrit. But if we're going to go with this translation of refuge, taking refuge, refugium comes from a place to come back from after you flee. And the definition, another definition is providing shelter, a condition of being safe or sheltered from pursuit, danger, or trouble. And so, yeah, actually, I'm really stuck on this wildlife refuge that you brought up, Nick, because it feels like in a wildlife refuge, right, the animals are safe. They're not going to be hunted. They're sheltered. And the Buddha, as you know, has taught us a prescription or a path, has offered us a path for transcending our suffering, for navigating the world. And when we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, we are really resting in those three jewels. We're sheltering, we're finding a home, we're finding comfort, peace, all these things that you guys mentioned. And it can feel like really just a place to rest, which in our daily modern life, I mean, think of all the stressors we have with family, relationships, children, our work. To find some place that feels comforting is really beautiful. It really is a gift that we've been offered. Taking refuge itself as an act, to me, when I think about that, I grew up in a Christian household. My grandfather started the Presbyterian church that my family was a part of in Atlanta, Georgia. And so church was a big part of my upbringing. And I also went to a Christian prep school where it was kind of like vogue or fashionable to be Christian and overtly Christian. And I remember in junior high, which of course is a time where you want to fit in, you want to feel belonging. All my friends, a big chunk of my friends were part of an Episcopalian church, and they had gotten confirmed. So confirmation in the church comes at different ages depending on your tradition. So in Episcopalian church in 6th or 7th grade, you get confirmed, which means you have a ceremony and you say, I am committed to a path of Christianity. And they all came back with these really pretty crosses that they got to wear. So of course I was super jealous. I didn't have this cross, this gold cross on there on this necklace. And I remember thinking, man, I wish I could get confirmed now, but my tradition we didn't get confirmed until high school. And by the time high school came around, though, of course, I was a rebel and I wasn't sure I believed in God anymore. Wasn't sure I wanted to follow the Christian tradition, and wound up not deciding to get confirmed. I decided confirmation wasn't for me. And I'm actually very thankful that confirmation came later and I had the opportunity to be more in touch with myself and my values. So when I think about taking refuge in the Buddhist tradition, to me, it's similar to confirmation because it comes at a time where you're choosing, right? It's a choice. Do you choose to take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha? Do you choose to be a Buddhist? Do you choose this path? And I don't know, for me, it's just nice to have the confirmation experience to relate to, because I kind of know what that means in sort of a religious tradition. Now, of course, we like to say that Buddhism is not religious. It's not a religion. There's no deity that we worship. The Buddha was a human, a man, and he's very clear to point out that he was not a deity. So I just offer that story because now we're adults. Everyone on here seems very adultish, and we have this opportunity, this gift to choose to take refuge. So what are we taking refuge in? There's the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And I want to share my screen for a second and put up, oh wait, hold on. I don't want to do that. Can I not do that? 1 second. Share content. Yes. Okay. You guys can see that, right? So this is a classic icon of Buddhism, the Dharma wheel. And the wheel, you'll often hear and see the wheel imagery in Buddhism is great because the wheel is always turning, it's circular, there's no beginning and end. Sort of the changing nature of its existence can be expressed through a wheel. But right at the center, you can see there's sort of 3 interwoven spirals, and those represent the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then the spokes out from the wheel are the Eightfold Path, which you'll learn about in a future class. So really at the heart of your experience and the heart of this pathway are those 3 treasures. So let's talk about them. The Buddha, we have all heard of the Buddha. There is the Buddha, like taking refuge in the Buddha is this idea that there is a person who was able to attain awakening Buddha means the awakened one, attain enlightenment, and share a path for us to go forward. And, you know, one of the most common questions I get when I talk about Buddhism to my friends or colleagues, they always say, well, is there one Buddha or many Buddhas? And I just chuckle at that, because in a lot of ways, there's both, right? So there's the one sort of original Buddha, but he taught that we all have this Buddha nature within. We can all become a Buddha. So to take refuge in this idea of the Buddha is to take refuge in the idea that it's possible for me and you and all of us to attain that same level of peace and serenity that the historical Buddha did. And so I'm going to explain each one of these briefly, and then I'm going to actually read some from Thich Nhat Hanh because I like his description of these. The Dharma represents the teachings and the truth. So there's sort of two ways to look at Dharma, or the way I think about it. Dharma is both the truth of reality, like to just sit in the suffering of the world, the grief, the sorrow, the joy, the ecstasy, like the kind of like soup of our life is Dharma. And there's also the Dharma of specific teachings. And you've been getting those through the Mount Adams Buddhist temple. You get Dharma through just life's hard lessons. But the Dharma represents teachings, you know, really being able to rest in, you know, people who have come before and who have some wisdom to share. And then finally, the Sangha is the community of practitioners. And, you know, right now I actually am feeling disconnected from Sangha. There's a lot in my life right now, and I have you all as a Sangha, but in terms of like seeing you every day or every week, I've been feeling a little disconnected. But the Sangha is a community of practitioners who all have agreed to follow the Buddhist path. And there's just so much joy and rest and peace and comfort in knowing that you have all chosen the same path, and knowing I can talk to you about teachings, about the suffering I feel, about the grief that I'm experiencing. And so the Sangha is really important, to have a group of people to rest and rely on and question and answer, and just know that you just have a shared understanding. And so for me, in a way, I find rest and comfort in all three of these. With the Buddha, for me personally, knowing that someone a man, that sounds so funny, a human has experienced human suffering like I have, and has given us a prescription for a pathway forward, and has walked that path to an extent to transcend their suffering. That just gives me extreme like hope and, you know, aspiration that it's possible for me too. And so that's where I find the rest in the Buddha. In the Dharma, I find rest and shelter in knowing that there are teachings that can help me. And in the Sangha, I find rest in knowing that there are others who are on this path. And to feel belonging and community and connection, that's such a great human desire and need, that I feel like I can really rest in the Sangha. I want to share about those three from, you know, one of our favorite books. Oh, I'm blurred, so you can't actually see it. That's funny. Old Path, White Clouds. But Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a book about the Buddha's life. And he writes about one of the Buddha's disciples. Sorry, I was forgetting the word disciple. One of the Buddha's disciples actually gave the Khandana, gave the three refuges to a gathering. And here is what he said about the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha is the awakened one, An awakened person sees the nature of life and the cosmos. Because of that, an awakened person is not bound by illusion, fear, anger, or desire. An awakened person is a free person filled with peace and joy, love and understanding. Master Gautama, our teacher, is a completely awakened person. He shows us the way in this life so that we may overcome forgetfulness and become awakened ourselves. Every one of us contains Buddha nature. We can all become a Buddha. So that's his description of the Buddha. Here's his description of the Dharma. The Dharma is the path which leads to awakening. It is the path which the Buddha teaches, the path which helps us transcend the prisons of ignorance, anger, fear, and desire. This path leads to freedom, peace, and joy. It enables us to love and understand all others. And then finally, the Sangha is the community of persons practicing the way of awakening, those who travel this path together. If you want to practice the way of liberation, it is important to have a community to practice with. If you are all alone, difficulties along the path may hinder your realization of awakening. It is important to take refuge in the Sangha. Whether you are an ordained bhikkhu, which is like a monk, or a lay person, the Sangha is the third precious gem. So I want to just open it up a little bit and ask I guess my first question is if you have an experience of where you have felt that you've taken refuge with something in your life, and it doesn't have to be the Buddha, Dharma, or Sangha, but something that you've rested in that has made you feel that sense of protection and shelter and home. And if you would be willing to offer that to the community here, just so that we could have something to work with.
Yeah, I've had a different experience than you have. I've found shelter and refuge in the person of Jesus and his way. And I'm just wondering if you see this as mutually exclusive.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, definitely not. And so I should say that, yeah, when we kind of make this public declaration to the Sangha and to ourselves that we're, becoming a Buddhist and sort of taking refuge in these gems, it doesn't negate or, it's not mutually exclusive. You could be a Christian Buddhist or an atheist Buddhist, right? It's, you're taking refuge in both. And, Jesus Christ is an amazing teacher. And so there's no conflict there. It's a good question. And so can I ask another question, which is when you say you've taken refuge in Jesus Christ, what does that feel like? What does that mean to you?
It's not just like parking it in a church or going to some social gathering with a bunch of cheerleaders or some political agenda. It's a relationship. You have a connection, personal connection, and it's come through the Holy Spirit, is an indwelling of the Spirit. So I had a transformation. It wasn't just like reading a book or meeting a group. It was a personal interaction and a transformation and a change of life from an indwelling, from an internal joy and love and source. And I found refuge in meeting with other people to pray and have our services or studies and so forth as well. And I see, a real similarity in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. There is the person, and then the teachings and the fellowship, the group, the support that you can share in the practices. So I find they're very complementary You know, I don't find it exclusive, and a different component, a different nature that adds to my spiritual dimension, through not being what I do, anxiety and the mental thought forms that are always going and so forth, that I find lacking in the Christian church. That can be, I don't necessarily call myself a Christian because it seems to have taken on a life of its own in the United States. What that means, no, I don't adhere to that. Exclusivity. I find sometimes in the Christian field that people are still stuck in their ego, and that's where I really enjoy the richness of the Buddhist tradition that's quieting the ego and the chatter and disturbances. So the pattern I see is the same, but a different emphasis, a different nature, and something that I'm really enjoying here. And I'm just wondering if the need to be exclusive. And so sometimes that happens in the Christian church. It's like, oh, we're not that, we're this. And that's kind of from the ego, good, bad, division, etc. And so I still enjoy in the person of Jesus and fellowship there. I don't fellowship in the Christian church anymore because it just seems to have kind of gone sideways. You know, with the cultural thing and politics and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Exclusivity, the exclusive nature of it, you know, and not being able to really kind of fit with that.
Right. Thank you for sharing. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Other experiences of taking refuge with something, doesn't have to be anything religious. Yes, Julia. Yeah.
I really have two things to share. One, I took refuge in the Tao through the teaching of Lao Tzu, but what I found missing there was the community. I live in the Southeast and the middle of the Bible Belt, so there was no community, and also the whole religion changed so much over time that there wasn't a lot of modern. It was archaic. It was to get what I needed to go way back to the original writers, and that was difficult to understand. And the other place was just being a mother. I have 2 kids, and that gave me community and love and responsibility and teachings and experiences. So that was a really wonderful refuge for me, but it ended. So I had a very big problem when my kids went to college. So
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up the refuge of motherhood, because I'm in the thick of that, and I often rest in it in the evenings where it's like my only job is to read books and brush teeth and and go to sleep with my kids, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful place to rest. Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me tear up. Yeah. Thank you for that example. That's a great example of something that we rest in. And it provides a structure, right? Like it's a structure for what you do. It's a structure for how you, your guiding principles. It's a guiding principles kind of thing. It's your integrity, really. It's your orientation. Other examples?
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
And just the last 5 years, I've been meeting with a group of 6 of us, and we've been studying Buddhist writings. We call ourselves a baby sangha because we're little and we're young, and but we're definitely devoted to the process and to each other. And it does bring us all a lot of peace and joy and love.
Yeah. Yeah, that community piece. I think that's such a human need, and to find a group of people that share something in common that can be that
Mhm.
just orientation point, right? Mhm.
We have been in conversation about the Buddha and his leaving his wife and child, and what does that mean, for us in this day and age? And some of us find it very personally provocative that that was his way. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or
Well, yeah,
yeah.
I guess I don't, and I'd love to open it up to others. I have thoughts on just that in our society right now, just, even just all the Buddhist teachers, right? Most of them, or just the opportunity to go, sit in meditation, go on a 3-month meditation retreat. It's like, well, that's not possible for me, and the women have, we've typically been the ones caring for the children and nurturing in that way. And so we don't have that luxury. And so I think there's just such a richness that's missing from the current Dharma or the current Buddhist discussion of the lessons that we've all learned through mothering and nurturing and how to be a Buddhist in action, like the meditation in the moment, the breaths between the tears of the kids and all that. And so I haven't really critiqued like the Buddha's life in that way of like, how could he have done that? Or how could he have done it differently? But I do think it's a rich conversation to be had. I've sort
I
of like,
appreciate that twist
yeah,
on finding that Dharma in the moment and become awakened in the breaths between brushing off, scraped knees and the tears.
yeah, thanks for
Thank you.
that. Yeah. We're coming to, so I guess I wanted to end with, I really appreciate all this discussion. I want it to keep going. I mean, really, I guess wanted to end with any questions people had, maybe fears or worries arising, like, if I do take refuge, what does that mean? Or what doesn't that mean? For me, when I took refuge, I've taken it a few times. It's always just been with this full, wholehearted, like, of course, this is exactly what I want to do. But, I've also made decisions in my life in other areas where I have trepidation, I have fear. I'm like, I'm not sure, is this really the right thing for me? So if there's anything like that that's coming up for people, I welcome those conversations now.
I have a question that is, as I've been learning and studying, that's always kind of comes up. When you're in a situation where you're in survival, where like, you're struggling just to survive, like financially, and, you have a lot of things that you're about to lose that are just in order to survive on a daily basis. How does a Buddhist decide at what point do you not become attached to the situation, so it doesn't matter if you lose all of that, and be okay with it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can you say it? Ask it one more time, maybe a little differently.
So like I'm trying to say it without sound.
Okay.
So basically, like, let's say you were going to lose your home.
Yeah.
How can you take refuge and learn to not be attached to that situation and not panic, or, to be able to kind of just let that go? That's
Right.
not my current situation. It had been my situation at one point. But, when you lose your home and you have small children and you have things like, how do you not become attached to the outcome of wanting to protect somebody?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think a beautiful question. And I think what the way I'm interpreting it, which is just through my lens, and I'd love to hear others, is that there's sort of an overlay of being a good Buddhist, right? So a good Buddhist would not be attached, right? A good Buddhist would say, oh, everything in life comes and goes. Life is impermanent. Things fall away. Things come in. It's the suchness of life. I should just be fine with losing my house or not being able to protect my children and have shelter for them. And I get caught in that trap of being the good Buddhist. I'm very good at getting caught in that trap. What I've learned is to let all those feelings in of like the fear, like the terror of like, I can't provide for my kids right now. I don't know where I'm going to live.
I call that leaning into it.
Yeah, leaning in. So leaning into to everything that is arising, just leaning into the human experience would be my recommendation. And the non-attachment will come after the leaning in, but to like put this overlay on that I have to be non-attached just pushes that just becomes even further away, that sort of sense of equanimity. And I've had many experiences in my life where I wanted equanimity. I was like, I need equanimity. I need it, like I need to just be okay. And that it's sort of the exact opposite is what happened by that. It's almost an attachment to that state of mind of non-attachment. So yeah, it sounds like just from your reaction, you get what I'm saying. And I think you know the path forward.
Reverend Emily, I hate to cut this short. Our time has come to a close, but I'm wondering, because I love these conversations and I love your responses so much. I've learned so much from you today. Are you willing to share an email address or anything if anybody wished to get in contact with you later with more questions?
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. Yes.
We could put that, if you want to put in the email address that you would like to receive questions or comments from in our chat, that would be great to everyone.
Okay.
Wonderful. Emily, thank you so much.
Excuse me. If you put it in the chat to everyone, it becomes public knowledge when this is posted online. So it's best if anybody would like to contact Emily, she'll be around for a little while. Please just privately chat with her and she can send it to you individually.
Okay, that sounds better. Thanks, cousin.
Good. That's a good caution. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Reverend Emily. That was a fantastic talk. I loved your Dharma talk. And now, moving on, we are going to talk about this path that the Buddha laid out for us in the Four Noble Truths. And with that, we have Sadi, Min, Tom, Ted. Take it away, Ted.
I'll even unmute so everybody can hear me. Thank you, Sadini Minbao. And we are going to talk now about the Four Noble Truths. There is a worksheet that is on the website, and I hope everybody has one. I think everybody does. And when the talk is over, feel free to fill it out. And the worksheet is for your benefit. So fill it out to be honest. It's not something that's going to be turned in, so to speak. It's just for your own knowledge and realization. Okay, so the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha himself decided that, as from what I've read, that he had attained enlightenment and decided that it was a very good thing to do to teach people about it. In fact, and I'm going to screen share here with everybody. Get this here. These are the Four Noble Truths as we have in our temple. This is sitting up on the wall. And this is, there is suffering in life. That is the first noble truth. The second, the origin of suffering is attachment. The third is the cessation of suffering is attainable. And the path to the cessation of suffering is the Noble Eightfold Path. So let's look here at the Buddha's words. And it says this is what was translated as to the very first sermon that the Buddha gave, the very first one after attaining enlightenment. These are the words that he deemed were the most important to start his very first sermon over. And it says, bhikkhus is normally translated as Buddhist monks, just for reference there. Now, Buddha's words, now this, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of suffering. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering, union with what is displeasing is suffering, separation from what is pleasing is suffering, not to get what one wants is suffering. In brief, the five aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. Now this bhikkhus is the noble truth of origin, of the origin of suffering. It is this craving, the Pali word is tanhe, or thirst, which leads to re-becoming, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for becoming, or for disbecoming. And he goes on to say, now this, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. Now this, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. It is this noble eightfold path, that is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness, and right concentration. So in these words, he laid out for us the Noble Eightfold Path. And that is, once again, there is suffering in the world. That's an acknowledgement. The cause of suffering, craving, desire, and attachment. The cessation of suffering is that it is attainable to have release from these. And then the path to cessation of suffering, the path that you can take to fade away from all of that desire. It is the path to end all suffering. So the first noble truth, the truth of suffering is dukkha. There is suffering in the world. You cannot escape suffering. And there's much confusion is due to the English translation of the Pali Sanskrit word dukkha as suffering. There are many times where it is translated as incapable of satisfying, not able to hear or withstand anything. Dukkha also refers to anything that is temporary, conditional, or compounded of other things. Even something precious and enjoyable is dukkha, because it will end, including the animated body you identify as yourself is dukkha, because it is impermanent and it will eventually perish. And so the first noble truth, it teaches us that there's suffering in the world. There's dukkha, there's dissatisfaction, or as Thich Nhat Hanh says, ill-being. It's just a basic state of unhappiness. And he's telling us this is unhappiness. This is what suffering is all about. And then he goes on in the second noble truth to talk about the cause of suffering, and that it is greed or even desire. So we continually search for something outside ourselves to make us happy. But no matter how successful we are, we never remain satisfied. The second truth is not telling us that we must give up everything we love to find happiness. The real issue here is more subtle. It's the attachment to what we desire that gets us into trouble. We attach not only to physical things, but also to ideas and opinions about ourselves and the world around us. Then we grow frustrated when the world doesn't behave the way we think it should, and our lives don't conform to our expectations. The second noble truth asks us to be mindful of craving, to observe and understand it, and it calls on us to do something about it. So the second noble truth points out the cause of suffering and why we suffer, why we have ill being, why we have all of this pain that we have in our lives. And it's up to us to realize the cause of suffering. Okay, what is it that is causing me suffering? What is it that is causing me to feel so much dissatisfaction and pain? And that leads us into the third noble truth, which is the solution to dukkha, or suffering, is to stop clinging and attaching. But how do we do that? Well, grasping for one ephemeral thing after another never satisfies us for long, because it's all impermanent. It is only when we see this for ourselves that we can stop grasping. When we do see it, the letting go is easy. The craving will seem to disappear of its own accord. The Buddha taught that through diligent practice, we can put an end to craving. The solution to dukkha is to stop clinging and attaching. But how do we do that? The fact is that it cannot be accomplished by any act of will. It's impossible to just vow to yourself, from now on I won't crave anything. This doesn't work, because the conditions that give us rise to craving will still be present. So here we have the understanding that you have to give up this dukkha. You have to stop clinging and attaching to things, the things that are causing you suffering. You come to a point where you have to realize, or it's good for you to realize, that for me to stop this suffering, I need to be able to let go of the clinging. I need to be able to let go of the pain of the attachment that comes from clinging and from dukkha. So from there we go to the fourth noble truth. The Buddha spent the last 45 years or so of his life giving sermons on aspects of the Four Noble Truths. The majority of these were about the fourth truth, the path, known as Magga. In the fourth noble truth, the Buddha, as a physician, prescribes the treatment for our illness, the Eightfold Path. Unlike in many other religions, Buddhism has no particular belief to merely believe in a doctrine. Instead, the emphasis is on living the doctrine and walking the path. The path is 8 broad areas of practice that touches every part of our lives. It is a path of exploration and discipline to be walked for the rest of one's life. Without the path, the first 3 truths would just be a theory. The practice of the Eightfold Path brings the Dharma into one's life and makes it bloom. So he lays out that there are these 3 reasons for dukkha. And then he gives us this fantastic fourth noble truth, the path to suffering. This is where we can go. This is what we can do to end this suffering, to end this miserable part of our existence. And he just lays it all out, and he does so with the Noble Eightfold Path. And this on the screen now is a interpretation of the Eightfold Path. There are many different interpretations of the Eightfold Path. This one says right view and continues on with the rest. I'd like everybody to keep in mind wise view. In some cases, right has a tendency to have a inference of right and wrong. But if you think of it also as wise view, wise resolve, it can lend a slightly different air to it. And I'm going to read these for the benefit of those that are listening. The Noble Eightfold Path. Right, number 1, right view, is a true understanding of how reality and suffering are intertwined. And right resolve, the aspiration to act with correct intention, doing no harm. Right speech, abstaining from lying and divisive or abusive speech. And right action, acting in ways that do not cause harm, such as not taking life, not stealing, and not engaging in sexual misconduct. Right livelihood, making an ethically sound living, being honest, even in business dealings. Right effort, endeavoring to give rise to skillful thoughts, words, and deeds, and renouncing unskillful ones. Right mindfulness, being mindful of one's body, feelings, mind, and mental qualities. And right concentration, practicing skillful meditation, informed by all of the preceding 7 aspects. And I'm not going to go into the Noble Eightfold Path any more than just introducing it as part of the Four Noble Truths. We do have someone who will be teaching about the Noble Eightfold, about the Noble Eightfold Path. And so it's good for us to just touch on this briefly in order to say, here it is. This is the Noble Eightfold Path. And so with that, that is the basic outline of the Four Noble Truths. It, of course, is much broader and much deeper than what I have very briefly outlined here. And so with that being said, at this time, I too would like to open it up to the room with questions or comments. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share? Yes, River.
Hi, excuse me. I just wanted to share something that I thought was kind of neat. You mentioned in addition to right, you could view it as wise. And someone shared with me recently, skillful is also another interesting way of interpreting it. And I wanted to share that because it resonated very deeply with me. So I thought I'd share that with the group. And thank you, by the way, this is really great.
Thank you, River. How about somebody else? Let's hear from others. Don't be shy. It's okay. You can do it. Yes, Marjorie.
Well, I think some of the genius behind the Eightfold Path is that when I get stuck in one effort, I can use another one of the efforts to unwind and help me through that place of stuckness. So say I'm efforting for wise speech. If I turn my attention to wise resolve or intention, then that helps me figure out what the wise speech would be. They are interconnected in a way that leads to more skillfulness, and you can work with them in that way.
Yes, very much so. The Noble Eightfold Path, it's really one path. They're all intertwined, but we'll let the teacher discuss that more when that lesson comes around. Do we have any questions?
Aren't there like different kinds of dukkha too? Like they're like broken down. What are those? I can't remember what that breakdown was.
Dukkha is the Sanskrit word for suffering. That is the most common way that it has been translated. But there are other translations like Thich Nhat Hanh's ill-being. Another one is just dissatisfaction. So whenever we're dissatisfied with something, because it's not the way we want it to be, this should be like this. Well, that's airing dissatisfaction. That's part of suffering. It's, I am not happy with something. So that has caused you dukkha, that dissatisfaction, that ill-being. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, but I thought there's like dukkha, and like dukkha is something else. I don't know. I don't know if I'm like explaining myself well, but there's three kinds Tycho's saying. But I just thought I would ask because I just couldn't remember what they were, and that felt related.
On that, I'm not familiar. Ty Cozen, do you understand what he's saying better?
You'll have to unmute Tychosen. You're still muted, Tychosen.
There we go. Dukkha dukkha, suffering of the body. And I think Sadini Minbao will carry on from here. But you're right, there are 3 dukkhas, and they're all involving specific areas of dissatisfaction or suffering. Minbao, do you know them?
I was just reading on them. Is there mudita dukkha? Is that it? Mudita? You're still, are you muted again?
Hi. I found the answer to the question, the 3 types of dukkha.
Go for it.
Yeah, dukkha dukkha, which is suffering from suffering, physical suffering and emotional discomfort. Viparinama dukkha, suffering of change, and sankura dukkha, the suffering of existence itself. Those would be the three types of dukkhas, at least according to Google.
That's correct. The important thing is to know that it's dissatisfaction or suffering. And so for all of our sais and ministerial folks in the room, please learn the 3 dukkhas. Yikes.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you very much, everyone, for helping me answer that question so skillfully. Do we have any other questions?
This is Jeff. Could I offer some more information on dukkha?
Please do.
So the etymology of the word itself is generally agreed to refer to a wheel with an axle hole that is the wrong size or out of alignment, causing a friction or a bumpy ride for whatever cart the wheel is attached to. So another good way to think about or to practice with dukkha is to think of being out of alignment, a wheel out of alignment or having ourselves out of alignment. A way I often think about it and describe it is that it is when what we think is happening or expect to be happening is out of alignment with what is actually happening. It causes that friction, and so much of our practice is bringing ourselves to see when we're out of alignment and trying to bring ourselves into alignment as much as possible. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very good point. I've always liked that analogy.
Venerable Jeff, thank you very much. The 3 dukkhas come down to physical, emotional suffering, the suffering of unwanted change, and the suffering of impermanence. But the important thing is just to remember the dissatisfaction. Good group.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you. I think, don't we have a few more minutes for questions? Or would you folks like just a little bit of time? Oh, yes, Joe.
Something that I struggled with over my first year of Buddhism is when we cross, how do I put this? Are these things that we're talking about doctrines? And it seems like there's a point where we start to take them as hard and fast rules that we then apply to other people in the Sangha. And it's, I'm thinking of when in our service this morning, we talked about the 3 different paths of Buddhism, the Mahayana and the other 2 that Ty will be exposing us to learn about. When we think that we're right and others are wrong, we start to disintegrate from the thing that we were hoping to attain or learn or understand. So I was wondering if someone would speak to when do we cross that line of these things becoming a doctrine that then takes us away from what we were hoping to achieve?
Well, that's a very good point. It's not quite on the exactly on the topic that we're discussing. I'm afraid I'm not very qualified to answer that as much as some of our more venerable teachers here, because I'm still pretty new to this Sadi Ni or Mi Min Bao. Do we have another venerable in the room that could answer that question better than me?
Well, this is Sadhini Minbao. I think we have to be careful when we take anything and make it into a dogma or a thou shalt type thing where we're saying that we have this beautiful path that we're following. We have these teachings and they're the best teachings in the world and they will save you. Let me go out and go out into the masses and recruit you. You know, that's not what we're here about doing, right? So there's, as in everything in life, there's everything's gray. There's nothing's black and white. There's a slippery slope. There's a sliding scale, however you want to think about it. And we've talked about it before, like, do you eat meat or not do you eat meat? Do you do do you have a cocktail at dinner or do you abstain? It's wherever you're comfortable. But we also have to think about, are our actions causing the suffering of others? And if I go out and tell someone that their belief system is wrong and mine is right, I can't think about in any situation that would be welcome news to them. And I'm causing suffering. I'm putting myself above them. We have to remember that, as our Buddhist beliefs tell us, that we are all the same. So we are the same as the Ukrainians being, preyed upon and invaded, and we are the same as the Russians who are doing the invasion. We are all the same internally, externally. We are of the same ilk, and we respect everyone's belief systems. And if you are truly, really believing that, then you're not going to make it into a dogma. You're going to accept other people, and you're going to understand that this person who has a belief system different than I is my teacher. So that person is helping. I learned a lot from Michael Gabriel today about Jesus Christ, who I don't know a lot about, but I know he was a wonderful Buddha in my eyes. So we're learned from each other. And as long as we keep that open-minded, I'm a student of the universe, and I'm here to relieve my own suffering as much as I can, and then turn around and help others through their suffering without making it into a dogma. I think it's an internal process, of course, and we probably find ourselves crossing that line and going, whoops, I just told someone what to do with themselves. Back up, back up, back up, back up. But we live in the moment, and every moment is a do-over, right? That's my own personal beliefs. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Yes, this is Richard, if I might pipe in for just a second. So I'm not a venerable, but what I wanted to share is going right along with what Min Bao was sharing is that I often think of these things such as the Noble Eightfold Path, and especially the mindfulness trainings. I think it could be easy to see them as rigid rules, but how I like to think of them is it's like, right now I'm driving down the highway in California, and on each side of the road, there are rumble strips. And these are just like the rumble strips. So if I kind of start getting too far off my path, it's like, oh, and I wake up and kind of get back on my path a little bit. This isn't about, and I think it's already been expressed, this isn't about me watching what everybody else is doing and comparing. It's just about me making the effort to alleviate some suffering in the world, both for myself and for others. And, I'm of the opinion that, all we can do is the best that we can do in any moment. And I know that I stumble and I trip over all these things, but, I try to dust myself off and keep on going. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but those were just some thoughts based on my own experience at this point. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard.
You got a lot of bows and hearts on that one, Richard. Thank you. Back to you, Ted.
Thank you very much. So anyway, we do still have just a few more minutes left for questions. Any or comments from anyone? I don't see any hands. Oh, Marjorie, yes.
Well, I'd like to just share my consternation here because as I approach taking the vows of Buddhism, it will be in the context of a line of thinking that I've been aligned with for 6 or 7 years now, called evolutionary spirituality. So I just want to bring in my reservation about the Buddhist path, because I so strongly feel that our world is changing in a direction where a paradigm is shifting so that more and more people are becoming aligned with the concept of interconnection between us, that we are not alone in our existence, and that we are in fact the same. And I just feel that the error in our egos is so reinforced and created by this idea that we are separate beings. And so when I hear the word dogma, to me, it just means a reinforcement of the idea that we are separate. And when you come into this, I'm not making very good sense out of this, but when you operate from, if you use the Eightfold Path in the in the context that this is a way of being with one's sisters and brothers in a way that is harmonious and is expressive of our connection to each other. It's not a have to a solitary person, but it's rather the way of being that works, assists, and is creative. And that's what I'm living from. And that's why I think that I am so invested in the Buddhist principles, because they come closest at this point. They come closest to that. That's all I say.
Thank you, Marjorie. Anyone else? River.
This was just a comment. I just wanted to thank you, Sadi Mintam, and Reverend Emily, so much from the bottom of my heart. This has been such an awesome class, and I just wanted to thank you so much.
Thank you for being here, River.
So that wraps up our time for the day. And I just want to also thank Reverend Emily and our Sadi Mintam Ted, our novice monk, and all of you. I'm most grateful that this was recorded, because these words were incredible from all of you, and I can't wait to go back and watch it again. You have now completed 2 of the classes of the requirement to take refuge and do your vows. So yay for you, woohoo! And next Saturday, we'll have 2 more again after regular temple service. Is there anything you'd like to say to close us out, Tai Kozen?
Please use your worksheet and write down why you're doing this. That's important journey is for you. Remember, dear ones, what a lovely Sangha. Oh my goodness, such wisdom here. You guys are pretty impressive. You rock. Wonderful stuff. But remember, the Buddha said he taught us all the things he could, but don't believe him. Go make it real for yourself. And that's what Marjorie was saying. Go make it real for yourself. Let go of the dogma. And Joe, what a wonderful question to lead us into looking at our heart. Not 2, there is only 1. Not 2, not 2, not 2. Excellent job. Thank you, Sayini Minbao, for being our moderator today. And if anyone here wants more, please feel free to contact Ted. He's always welcome for contact if we need anything else. And we'll see you next week. I want to ask if Venerable Jeff, anything to add, or Taizi, anything to add?
Yes, very good discussions. I really enjoyed it. I would just like us to get away from the idea of requirement. None of these classes are required to take refuge. The Buddha would walk up, people would walk up to the Buddha and want to take refuge, and the Buddha would just simply acknowledge their desires. What we have here are learning classes, and if these questions of whether I should take refuge or I shouldn't take refuge are plaguing your mind or your heart, these classes will help you to sort of dissolve the divisions that in your mind that is there. But if somebody walked into my temple today and said, I want to take refuge, I wouldn't tell them they have to take classes. I would hope that they would come back and they would join Sangha and they would do Dharma. But there is, Tai Kosin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a requirement for classes.
You're absolutely right. However, it helps us to know what we're going into. It's like having a map. I'm going to go from where I am right now to Portland. If I have a map, I can sort of get there. And that's what all of this is about. Just, do I want to go to Portland that way? Good job, my dear ones. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hopefully we'll see you again.
Everybody, I'm going to be leaving the room open.